So, this week we're moving into a type of assessment that many people associate with schools, standardized testing, IQ scores, college admissions, disability evaluations, and career placement. And because of that, this week can bring up a lot. Some of you may hear intelligence testing and immediately think about school labels, gifted programs, special education, SATs, ACTs, or maybe that one test that you took years ago that still lives rent free in your nervous system. So, I want to start off with this frame. Assessment scores are not neutral. They can help people access services, understand strengths, receive accommodations, find career pathways, or make sense of learning differences. But they can also be misused. They can be used to sort people, exclude people, rank people, shame people, or make sweeping claims about somebody's worth, ability, or future. So, our job this week is not to memorize every test name in the book. Our job is to understand the categories of assessment, what each type of assessment is trying to measure, and how to interpret results with humility, caution, and context. So, this lecture is about what scores can tell us, what they cannot tell us, and why counselors need to know the difference. At first glance, you might be thinking, okay, but I'm not trying to become a school psychologist. Why do I need to know about intelligence, achievement, and aptitude testing? It's a fair question. The answer is that counselors run into these assessments all over the place. You may see them in school records, you may see them in IEP or 504 documentation. You may review them when a client is seeking accommodations in college. You may see them in psychological evaluations for ADHD, learning disabilities, autism, intellectual disability, traumatic brain injury, or vocational rehabilitation. In clinical mental health counseling, these results may show up in intake paperwork, referral records, disability documentation, or court-related evaluations. In career counseling, aptitude and achievement data may inform educational or vocational planning. In substance use treatment, assessment history may reveal learning challenges or cognitive limitations that affect treatment engagement. So, even if you never administer an intelligence test yourself, you may still need to read the report, explain it to a client, consult with another provider, or use the information in treatment planning. So, think of these tests like medical imaging. If you are not a radiologist, you're probably not reading the MRI from scratch. But if your client brings in the report, you need to understand enough to know about what it suggests, what questions to ask, and how it can impact care. Assessment works similarly. You may not be the person administering the full battery, but as a counselor, you need to be assessment literate. So here's the big question for this module. What are we trying to understand when we assess ability, achievement, and aptitude? It sounds simple, but it's actually where a lot of bad assessment practices begin. If we don't know what questions we're asking, we'll probably misuse the tool. So if a student is failing math, are we asking about intelligence, achievement, instruction, anxiety, attendance, a learning disability, maybe trauma or language access, motivation, executive functioning? Those are a lot of different questions. And each different question requires a different kind of data. And this is why I want you to think about assessment like using different lenses on a camera. One lens gives you a close-up, one gives you a wide shot, one helps you see movement, one helps you see detail in low light. None of those lenses captures the entire person. Ability, achievement, and aptitude assessments are all different lenses. They each give us a view. The mistake happens when we confuse one view for the whole picture. So throughout this lecture, I want you to keep asking, what is this test actually measuring? And what is it not measuring? And what else do I need to know before making a decision about this person? So let's start by separating three terms that often get blended together: intelligence or general ability, achievement, and aptitude. Intelligence and general ability assessments ask, what cognitive abilities are being sampled? Achievement assessments ask, what has this person learned or demonstrated so far? And aptitude assessments ask, what potential or readiness may be present for future learning or performance? These categories overlap, but they are not the same. So here's a simple metaphor. Imagine somebody learning to play a guitar. An ability assessment might ask, does this person show patterns of memory, processing, coordination, or reasoning that could support learning? An achievement assessment asks, what songs can this person play right now? What chords do they know? Can they read music? Can they keep rhythm? And an aptitude assessment would ask, based on current patterns, what kinds of musical learning might come easily with training? But none of those answers tells us everything. They don't tell us whether the person loves music. They don't tell us whether they had access to lessons. They don't tell us whether somebody shamed them the first time that they sang in public. They don't tell us whether they practice in a quiet house or a chaotic environment where they cannot focus. They don't tell us if they even have time to practice. So that's the counselor's job, to place scores inside of the human context. So let's begin with intelligence and general ability assessment. These assessments are designed to measure selected cognitive abilities under structured conditions. Depending on the instrument, they may assess things like verbal comprehension, perceptual reasoning, working memory, processing speed, spatial skills, fluid reasoning, or problem solving. Common intelligence measures include the Welshler and Stanford-Binet and Kaufman tests, group intelligence tests, and specialized cognitive measures. Now, we need to be careful here. The word intelligence carries a lot of cultural weight. People hear intelligence test and often think, this tells me how smart someone is. But that's too simplistic. An intelligence test is not a magic truth machine. It is a structured sample of performance on certain tasks at a certain point in time, under certain conditions, compared to a norm group. A score is shaped by the instrument, the testing environment, the client's language, culture, disability status, fatigue, anxiety, rapport with the examiner, familiarity with test taking, and many other factors. So when we interpret intelligence testing, we should be thinking less like judges and more like investigators. The score is a clue, it's not the whole case. So here's one of the most important things from this lecture that I want you to know. An IQ score is a data point, not a definition of the person. Please tattoo that on the inside of your counseling brain. Not literally, unless you are very committed to assessment ethics. But seriously, this matters. Many clients carry old assessment language like a wound. They may have been told they were slow, gifted, not college material, low functioning, bright but lazy, or not trying. And those labels can become part of somebody's identity. A client might come into counseling and say, oh, I'm just not smart, or I tested gifted, so I should be able to handle this. Or I was always bad at school, so there's no point in trying. This is where counselors need to slow things down. A score may tell us something useful, but it doesn't tell us who a person is. It doesn't tell us their capacity for meaning, creativity, care, resilience, humor, wisdom, or growth. And it definitely does not tell us their worth. This is where history also matters. Intelligence testing has not always been used responsibly. In fact, some of the history is really ugly. In the early 20th century, intelligence tests were connected to the eugenics movement. Testing was used to support racist, ableist, classic, and xenophobic ideas about who was fit and who was deficient, and also who deserved opportunity. Immigrants, people with disabilities, poor communities, and people from racially marginalized groups were often judged through tests that did not account for language, culture, education, trauma, or access. During World War I, group intelligence tests like the Army Alpha and Army Beta were used with military recruits. These tests influenced later testing practices, but also carried major problems. Many examinees were immigrants, had limited English proficiency, or had limited formal education. The results were then used by some public figures to make sweeping claims about intelligence across racial, ethnic, and national groups. And those claims were not just academically wrong, they had consequences. Testing became part of the machinery used to justify exclusion, segregation, institutionalization, immigration restriction, and forced sterilization policies. So when we say scores are not neutral, this is what we mean. Assessment tools exist inside of social systems. They can help and they can harm. Our ethical responsibility is to know that history so that we don't repeat it in a quieter or even more polished way. So today, this means we ask better questions. Who is this test normed on? Is this test valid for this client? Was the client assessed in their strongest language? Were accommodations needed and made? Was the testing environment appropriate? Are we interpreting a cognitive difference as a deficit because it does not match dominant expectations? That history does not mean that we throw all of assessment away. It means that we use it with caution, skill, and ethical awareness. So now let's shift into achievement assessment. So achievement assessment measures learned knowledge or academic skills. These assessments are often used in school and educational planning, but they can show up in clinical records, disability documentation, college accommodations, vocational programs, and rehabilitation settings. Achievement tests may assess reading, writing, math, spelling, listening comprehension, oral language, or other academic skills. So here's the key distinction. Achievement is about what the person has learned, practiced, accessed, and demonstrated. That means achievement is connected to opportunity. Low achievement score does not automatically mean low ability. It may mean the person did not receive effective instruction. It may mean they have dyslexia. It may mean that they moved schools 6 times. It may mean that they were depressed, hungry, unsafe, grieving, undocumented, bullied, untreated for ADHD, or trying to learn in a language that was not their first language. Achievement scores can be incredibly helpful, especially when they identify specific academic skill gaps. But again, they need context. Think of achievement like looking at a garden. If one plant is not growing, you could say, well, this plant's defective. Or you could ask, how much sunlight did it get? Is the soil here healthy? Is it getting watered? Was it planted in the right season? Was something blocking its roots? Achievement assessment helps us look at growth, but counselors have to ask about the conditions that shaped that growth. This slide is really important because ability and achievement get confused all the time. Ability refers to cognitive capacities that may be present. Achievement reflects what the person has learned and demonstrated. So, for example, imagine a student who has strong reasoning ability, but low reading achievement. That pattern may suggest a specific learning disorder in reading. It might suggest inadequate reading instruction. It might suggest attention issues. It might suggest anxiety. It might suggest language access issues. It might also suggest a history of missed schooling. So the point is that the gap gives us a question. It does not give us a complete answer. This is the place where counselors can be powerful advocates. Instead of saying the student isn't performing, we might say, this student's performance suggests that there may be barriers interfering with skill development. We need to understand what supports are needed. That's a very different stance. One blames the student, the other investigates the conditions. And in counseling, that stance is going to matter. Clients are already often carrying shame. Our job is not to add a more official looking shame label with a percentile rank attached to it. Our job is to help make sense of the data in a way that supports care, planning, and access. Now let's talk about aptitude. Aptitude assessment looks at potential or readiness for future learning or performance. It's often used in educational, vocational, military, career, and rehabilitation settings. Aptitude can be broad or specialized. For example, somebody might be assessed for mechanical reasoning, clerical speed, spatial ability, verbal ability, numerical ability, or readiness for a specific training program. The basic idea is, based on current patterns, what might this person be prepared to learn or do with support and opportunity? But here's the warning label. Aptitude is not destiny. Aptitude scores can suggest possible directions, but they should not be used to trap people inside of a narrow future. Think of aptitude like a weather forecast. A forecast can help you plan. It can tell you conditions look favorable. It can suggest that a storm might be coming, but it does not control the sky. Human beings are not fixed weather systems. Motivation matters, interest matters, identity matters, culture, disability support, mentorship, access, practice, economic conditions, and family expectations matter. A person may have strong aptitude in an area that they do not care about. Someone else may have lower initial aptitude, but strong persistence, meaningful support, and deep personal investment. So aptitude results can start a conversation, but not end one. And aptitude is not destiny. So let's sit with this a little bit longer because aptitude testing can easily turn into gatekeeping. So imagine a teenager takes an aptitude test and scores high in mechanical reasoning. Everyone says, great, you should go into trades or engineering. And that might be useful information. But what if the student wants to be a nurse? Or what if they love theater tech? Or what if they want to design adaptive equipment for people with disabilities? What if they've never considered engineering because nobody in their family went to college? What if they have an interest in art, construction, and problem solving? The counselor's role is not to say the test has spoken. The counselor's role is to say, this result gives us something to explore. Aptitude can point towards strengths. It can also reveal areas where support may be needed, but it should be integrated with interests, values, lived experience, cultural expectations, financial realities, and the client's own sense of purpose. This is a good place to remind ourselves that career and vocational decisions are not only individual decisions, they're also shaped by systems. Who gets encouraged towards college? Who gets tracked into certain jobs? Who is assumed to be leadership material? And who is told to just be practical? Who is seen as having potential? These questions are important when we interpret aptitude data. So let's pull this all together. When we're looking at intelligence, achievement, or aptitude, ethical interpretation requires humility. First, don't overly rely on one score. One test should not be the sole basis for a major decision about a client's life. This is a core assessment principle. Use multiple sources of information. That might include interviews, observations, records, collateral information, academic history, symptom checklists, behavioral data, and client self-report. Second, know your own scope of competence. As counselors, you may be qualified to use some assessments and not others. Some instruments require advanced training, supervised practice, or specific credentials. If you are not trained to administer or interpret a tool, don't wing it. Assessment is not a fake it till you make it situation. Third, you're going to want to look at the limitations. If testing conditions were unusual, say that. If the norms may not fit the client very well, say that. If language, disability, culture, or distress may have affected performance, say it. And then fourth, we're going to explain results in plain language. Clients should not need a psychometric decoder ring to understand their own assessment results. Instead of saying, your performance falls within the low average range relative to same age peers, we might say instead, compared with people your age in the norm group, this score suggests this area may take more effort for you, especially under time conditions. That's more human, and it's definitely more useful. And then finally, avoid pathologizing difference. Different does not automatically mean disordered. Lower does not automatically mean lazy. Struggling does not automatically mean incapable. Ethical assessment asks, what does this person need? Before it asks, what category do they fit? So, what's the counselor's role in all of this? Counselors may review reports. You may help clients understand assessment findings. You may advocate for accommodations. You may integrate results into treatment planning. You may refer for additional evaluation. You may consult with schools, agencies, physicians, psychologists, supervisors, or interdisciplinary teams. You may also help clients emotionally process what assessment results mean to them. That piece is easy to overlook. For some clients, assessment results are validating. They may think, finally, somebody sees what I've been struggling with. For others, results may feel frightening or stigmatizing. They may think, does this mean that there's something wrong with me? Or does this mean that I can't do what I wanted to do? Counselors are often the people who help clients metabolize assessment information. And I use that word intentionally. Getting test results can feel like swallowing something large. Our role is to help clients break it down, understand it, and decide what to do with it. A good feedback conversation should leave a client feeling more informed, more grounded, and more able to take the next step, whatever that is for them. It should not leave them feeling reduced to a number. So let's close with 2 questions. What is this score helping me to see? And what might this score be hiding? Those 2 questions can save you from a lot of bad assessment practice. A score might help you see a learning need, a cognitive strength, a processing weakness, a readiness area, or a reason to refer. But it might hide culture, language, trauma, poverty, racism, disability, test anxiety, poor instruction, grief, motivation, family pressure, or a testing environment that did not fit the person. So as you move through this week's readings, don't get stuck trying to memorize every instrument. Instead, focus on the bigger clinical skill. Can you see the difference between intelligence, achievement, and aptitude? Can you explain why context matters? Can you recognize when a score is being overinterpreted? Can you use assessment information to support the client rather than to thwart the client? That's the counselor's work, and that's why history matters. Assessment has been used to harm. It's also been used to help people access services, accommodations, self-understanding, and advocacy. The difference is not only the test. The difference is the person using it. So use assessment carefully, use it ethically, use it with cultural humility, and use it as part of a story. Never mistake the score for the person sitting in front of you.